When smoke rises from the seven rings, the pink fish will emerge from the sea, devouring all the creatures of the land. One of the most overlooked aspects of Splatoon right now is how committed the developers are to creating a unique form of long-term storytelling in which they foreshadow events and characters long before they actually appear in actual canon. The first example of this is probably Marina appearing in Splatoon 1 in a sunken scroll and then becoming a major character in Splatoon 2. But there are like several other examples of this. And I think the most insane example so far is the final revelation of what the seven rings actually means. Because this is something that people have been speculating on for a long time. This is something that blew my mind when I saw it in Splatoon 2. And now finally we have a bit of an answer, a little bit, in Splatoon Raiders. The final boss of Splatoon Raiders was indeed foreshadowed in Splatoon 2. So this thing was like 8 years in the making, and they finally did something with it. They finally like gave a little bit more context as to what this thing is and like what it does, and like a little bit more about salmonids and the history of the world and all that. And the answers we've gotten are not only satisfying, they set the stage for future developments, not only with the salmonids themselves, but in evolving the characters involved with taking out the salmon arc and preventing the salmon apocalypse. Deep Cut, of all people, were the ones who were able to stop this thing from devouring the entire planet. So not only did Nintendo successfully introduce the element of the salmonids, not only did they give them very complex, very, very deep lore that spanned several games, the payoff to it ended up developing other characters. It ended up like establishing, tying into the lore with Deep Cut and their background in regards to like how their families in ancient times fought the salmonids, working with their partners. And this has been a trend in Splatoon over the years. I remember how it blew my mind when Pearl just like blew that Alterna machine's mind in with her voice in the Octopass DLC. Like what we're seeing here is we're seeing genuinely really good video game storytelling in which all these random elements are introduced, they're foreshadowed, they're set up, and they are paid off in spectacular fashion. Not only do we get constant revelations about the state of the world, about the characters, about their capabilities, about like their relationships to one another, not only do we get like really good like setups for future events, like we get amazing, completely unique scenarios that I really don't think could possibly be done in any other format. Like, not only is this unique to like video games in general, it feels like genuinely really good, unique storytelling that can't really be done in any other medium because it relies on you being so invested in the characters, and it relies on you playing every day. It relies on you like learning more about the setting and the world. And in a lot of cases, a lot of this information is not available right away. So there is no like blazing through the game in 2 days or whatever, and then just discovering everything and then figuring it out like before they even get to it. Like we are seeing like insane lore revelations happening sometimes in real time. There have been cases where, after updates, we get new information about the setting and characters that we just didn't know before. So what this means is that if you have been playing Splatoon since it first launched in May 2015, you have seen a number of insane lore revelations a developing story, and a constantly growing cast of characters. Like, they have done a spectacular job setting up a unique setting and universe that's very much unlike anything else on the market. Something like Overwatch, in comparison, is relatively stagnant, where like nothing really changes all that much, nothing really grows or evolves. It's just kind of the same it's always been. It's always just the same boring generic concept and generic characters and uninspired gameplay. With Splatoon, like with each new release, we get in guaranteed like a new cast of characters with their own unique lore. We get a new single player campaign with its own set of like deep sea scrolls, and eventually we get like some really mind blowing revelations. And this is a really good example of what that looks like, in which what should be a really generic, uninspired boss turns into this really big deal because this thing had been set up for years previously. It was not set up at the beginning of the game. It goes on long before that, and that gives the encounter kind of a weight to it. It gives it kind of an impact. It makes it feel as if it's actually a big deal for the setting. And this is not the first time Splatoon has done something like this. It really is shocking how often they're able to take their pre-existing cast that a lot of people overlooked or didn't care about and make them into big deals. We saw this with Mr. Grizz in Splatoon 3, where he became an antagonist. And not only did he become an antagonist, we also saw firsthand that there's a lot of mystery still surrounding the character and his origin. Like, we're still trying to figure this out, and this is something that will be addressed in future games. And what we have now is a setting that has multiple different factions that are all competing with each other in this like endless turf war, we could say, for dominance of the planet. So essentially, the creators have established a setting and a universe that can continue indefinitely, not only simply by utilizing pre-existing elements, but by constantly introducing new ones. And often at very sporadic intervals. It's kind of crazy how long it took for us to get this kind of payoff, but when you take into consideration just how much else has been happening in the world of Splatoon over the past 8 years, it does make a lot of sense. Where such an eagerly anticipated plot development was relegated to a side game, and not only did it work very well, it really left the door open for future plot developments with these characters. So essentially, although this is the end of this current encounter, we now have like more clarification on what all this means, and we have an idea of how Nintendo is going to develop plot elements into these games going forward, where it is going to reward people who are very much invested in the lore. We have seen this play out time and time again, and it is becoming a trend. I think it is like a core development philosophy of Splatoon, in that they are developing an entire unique universe based on this concept of like squids shooting each other with ink out of their guns. And they're killing it. They're absolutely positively killing it with this philosophy. Obviously, it remains to be seen as to what they do next with the IP. I imagine it's going to be Splatoon 4. They've already kind of hinted towards that. So I imagine we're going to have a completely original campaign. We're going to have new characters. We're going to have like more elements introduced. It's going to be really interesting to see what they do. And if it's anything like the previous two installments, like what we're going to see is just a massive kind of subversion of pre-existing elements. You know, because Splatoon 3 did that a lot, where it set up the idea that Octavio was behind it, and then it turned out it wasn't, and it was actually Mr. Like, you know, we're going to see more aspects like that. You know, little things like having the idols be the antagonists in Splatoon 3's main campaign. Like, that's not something anyone saw coming, and yet, like, it was this really exciting change in direction, and it really made everyone love the characters before they became straight up protagonists and raiders. And that kind of storytelling is really making people feel invested in the world and the setting of Splatoon. Like the fact that we went from like fighting against these guys in Splatoon 3 to like working with them in Raiders, like that is some really interesting world building and really does a lot not only for the characters but for the games as a whole. It's interesting how we constantly see Nintendo fans do this thing where they're just like, "Oh, Nintendo games need more stories. They need more of a focus on narrative," and yet they constantly ignore all the attempts by the company to do that because they aren't Paper Mario or Zelda games. Essentially, like we have seen a lot of younger developers at Nintendo, like with the Fire Emblem people, like with the Xenoblade guys, and like with this putting out like more serious attempts at creating genuinely good narratives. And yet, for whatever reason, we're still in this weird phase where a lot of people don't seem to realize how good the plots of these games actually are, and how good they are at foreshadowing elements, and how good they are at actually paying off these elements. Like what we have seen over the past 10 years of Splatoon is better than anything we have ever seen in something like, say, Game of Thrones or Yellowstone or The Boys or whatever else normie slop people were consuming. Like Splatoon has outlasted all of that in spite not really being as popular in America. And I do think this is Raiders is a really interesting game because it is, I think, the point where we can no longer continue this farce of pretending this game is only popular in Japan. It's a cultural phenomenon in Japan, but we are seeing the early stages of this game blowing up in America as well.